welcome to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for joining me today. I always appreciate you being here. I hope you're staying safe and staying sane with everything going on. As I mentioned about a week ago, I will not let go of this Middle East situation that has been going on, and I'm going to go as far as saying the disaster created by Biden cabal. On that note, I do have a very, very special guest with me today. One of very few experts that I could think of who could explain the situation that took place between Biden, Palestinian Authority, and Israel. Daniel Greenfield, he's a Shellman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Also, he's the writer and editor at the blog The Point. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. Let's dive right into it. First question, what is Biden doing?
Well, to whatever extent Biden is doing anything. I mean, this is a guy whose main specialties are word salads and eating ice cream. He has trouble finding his pants in the morning, just to be polite here. This is a guy who is being run by his staffers, and frankly, Biden doesn't care about a lot of this stuff. Biden is not a big foreign policy guy. He got into bed with Iran about 2006 or so when he was trying to look for sources of money in order to run his presidential campaign, which obviously failed miserably like everything he does, but got him to the attention of Obama and got him to his current spot. He got into bed with Iran back then, back into bed with Iran lobby, but he cares very much about foreign policy because Biden is all, what's in it for me? Right now he's desperately clinging to power, and he figured out that the only way he has any chance of doing that is to take his coalition, mainly of Black Democrats, try to play up to the left as much as possible, and that means letting them run the show.
Unbelievable. But no, it is believable. Okay, so let's go to Middle East. Biden decided to go visit Saudi Arabia, Israel, and meet with Palestinian Authority. But I can't help but to feel like he actually went to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Palestine with his attitude, because I'm pretty sure when he was going to the east side of Jerusalem, he removed the Israeli flag. Am I stretching this?
So as a diplomatic visit to Israel at that point did not make sense. The Israeli government had collapsed. There was a caretaker prime minister. This is not a time for a presidential visit. It made absolutely no sense at all. There was really only one reason to do this, which was, beyond the whole Saudi thing, which was to undermine Israel. And, if you think about what is a perfect time to undermine Israel, you go when the government has collapsed. There's a caretaker left-wing prime minister there who really has no public or political support at all, and who was very happy to do whatever Biden wanted in order to pick up some support for the upcoming election. So to strengthen Israel or to do any kind of diplomatic outreach, this visit did not make any sense. To undermine Israel and to support the terrorists, the PLO, Hamas, and so on, that was perfect timing. And, this is on par with what Biden been doing with Israel along, which was restarting the money tap to the terrorists, pushing Israel to once again make concessions to the terrorists. I mean, he put Hadi Amr in there. Hadi Amr is pretty much a creature of Qatar, which is allied with Iran. He put him in there. He now elevated him yet again, giving him yet more power and influence over the so-called conflict. And, the bigger picture there is what the Abraham Accords accomplished was to move the narrative in the Middle East away from this obsessive focus with Israel and the PLO and to focus it on Iran, because the Abraham Accords really was an anti-Iran coalition. Now, in theory, Biden is making this trip to bolster the Abraham Accords. They talked about the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, but in practice, it was to once again put the spotlight on the PLO. Yes, as you mentioned, he went in. The Biden administration had been obsessed with rolling back the embassy move to Jerusalem. Part of that was carving out. They know they can't just move the embassy right away, but they're obsessed with carving out a consulate, a diplomatic space for the PLO in Jerusalem. They've been pushing aggressively to open a consulate. The left-wing coalition government have been telling them basically, if you force us to do this, our government will collapse and Netanyahu will be back in office. So they held off on directly doing that, but they're still effectively creating a consular space. And this whole trip where they took down the Israeli flag, where Biden compared Israel to the British Empire and the PLO to the Irish. This was very much all about pandering to the terrorists, about rolling back the accomplishments under the Trump administration and to undermine Israel. And this is what the trip was about.
Exactly. I'm going to take the conversation to off topic in my head for a second, but I do want to hear from you. The current prime minister, supposedly a left-wing guy who few people have claimed he's very concerned with Israel's safety. I don't believe that, but I'll let you be the more informed person on that topic. But isn't he also a fan of two-state solution, which we both know is a bad idea for Israel?
Oh, absolutely. Just to provide some context, I referred to Yair Lapid, who's currently the caretaker prime minister, as Israel's version of Justin Trudeau. He was a TV host with a famous father. He's completely inept at doing anything at all. Pretty much nobody voted for him. The only reason he is in power now is because of Israel has this European parliamentary system, which is completely dysfunctional. But far more people voted for Netanyahu's party than voted for Lapid's party. So this guy has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. Yes, he's a supporter of the two-state solution, which would create a terrorist state, which Israel has been trying to do, by the way, in response to pressure from the Clinton administration, from various administrations forever at this point. We're going back to the 90s on this. At no point in time has there been any actual peace. Has there been any hint that a two-state solution or any kind of separation solution remotely works? But yes, of course, he's happy to go along with all this plan to make a deal with the terrorists, even though, again, the terrorists have made it very clear there's no deal that they will accept that will stop the fighting, that will stop the war in Israel. But he's a very perfect, ideal cat's paw for this kind of operation, a placeholder figure who is going to go along with the idea that, the problem is that Israel has not surrendered enough territory to the terrorists. If Israel surrenders enough territory, everything will be fine.
But here's my question, just in case if I'm misunderstanding the concept. At the end of the day, Palestinians, Palestinian Authority, Hamas, Iran, they're not interested in a little bit more land or a little bit. They're interested in no more Israel gone, right?
Yes, exactly. When we talk about the PLO Hamas, you have to understand these are terrorist groups that are sponsored, that are funded by powers in the regions precisely to get rid of Israel. The PLO itself actually goes back to the Soviet era, where basically Soviet operatives helped set it up, created this entire cause for it. Hamas itself is backed by Qatar, it's backed by Iran. Iran itself manages to have all sorts of a hand within the PLO as well. So the bottom line is this is entirely an effort to erase Israel. But of course, they are not actually going to come out and say that. So they keep talking about, well, we're going to make some sort of negotiated arrangement. We're going to make some sort of agreement. We're going to make some sort of deal. In fact, there is no agreement. There is no deal. And this entire idea that there are moderates and extremists is now more of a lie than ever, especially since over the last year, we've actually seen ISIS terrorists coordinating with the PLO, with Hamas, and being praised by them. So this is absolutely one big terrorist conspiracy that is funded and led and backed by the usual players in the region, including Qatar, which is itself just acts as a proxy of Iran. And their goal is to destroy Israel. That's what it's been all along. But we've had this myth, the one that Bill Clinton helped to impose on the region, the one that's actually led to thousands of people being killed, that even a lot of the Arab countries now no longer want to be part of. They realize that it's destabilizing, that it's destructive, and that it helps Iran. But the Biden administration, like the Obama administration, is still invested in it.
Very true. Biden also resumed or reactivated the funding for paper slate, correct? Which President Trump kind of put an end to it. Go ahead.
So paper sway is basically the Palestinian Authority providing salaries and pensions to either imprisoned terrorists or their family members. So basically you carry out an attack on Israelis, you kill Israelis, or you kill Americans. Actually, the origin of the cutoff of funding came when an actual American, non-Jewish military veteran was killed in Israel. But the Biden administration has claimed that it's not directly funding paper this way, but the basic reality is if you put money into it, and this is the same thing that's going on in Afghanistan, they claim they're not funding the Taliban, they're just providing aid. But the practical matter is you put money into to areas controlled by the terrorists, you are funding the terrorists and you are funding the terrorism.
Very true. We are up for our first commercial break. Let's take a quick moment. Go check out Extract Gravity by Brennan House. When we come back, we're going to start talking Saudi Arabia and Israel. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Extract Gravity is an all-natural energy and health drink developed by Brannon House several years ago with a team of experts. Extract Gravity supports a healthy heart, strong immunity, skin, hair and nails, cognitive health, and cellular health. This all-natural energy drink is loaded with antioxidants. But don't take our word for it. Do your own research to find the benefits of red wine extract, bilberry extract, grapeseed extract, pine bark extract, and vitamin C. Brannon credits Extract Gravity in part for his abundance of energy and good health. Order your 30-day supply now at mystore.com. Be sure to use the promo code on the screen for a generous discount. Extract Gravity, your all-natural source for energy and good health. Find it at mystore.com.
Welcome back to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for staying with us until now. Please do go to mystore.com under health category. Grab yourself Extract Gravity. Use the promo code AC21. You'll be supporting Mike Lindell, Brian House, and this broadcast right here. Joining me today is Daniel Greenfield, Shellman Fellow at David Hurwitz Freedom Center, and we are discussing Biden cabal, Israel, Palestinian Authority, but now we're going to go to Saudi Arabia. So, Daniel, I can't tell you how many normal people or media outlets that were also celebrating the entire Saudi Arabia opened their airway to Israel. Now there's a direct flight. My take on it. The Muslims in Israel will have one-way ticket to go to Mecca and do their, Islamic thing. If Jews decide to go, most likely they're going to either disappear in Saudi Arabia or be arrested for spying for Mossad. Saudi Arabia is going to collect us cash, extra money for the direct flights. What's the good news for Israel here?
All it does is pretty much what you said. It provides a pathway for Muslims doing Hajj to go to Saudi Arabia. And obviously, non-Muslims are not allowed to do that in the first place. If you're a non-Muslim and you're caught in Mecca, bad things will happen to you. So, in theory, this is supposed to be some sort of modernization, liberalization. As a practical matter, it means rather little. What Israel really needs from Saudi Arabia, in theory, is coordination on any kind of strike on Iran. That might be a kind of a dodge here because, just because Israeli aircraft can travel over Saudi Arabia now, in theory, provides cover for an attack, for a possible attack on Iran's nuclear program at some point. That, in theory, is the headline here, but I wouldn't invest too much into it. The Saudis have been okay with signing off on some countries, particularly the United Arab Emirates, getting closer to Israel. The Saudis themselves are only going to do so much. And again, this is not because the Saudis have suddenly become wonderful people who are now enlightened. It's because, again, everybody is very worried about the threat of Iran. And to some degree, they're worried about all other demons that they unleashed, like the Muslim Brotherhood. All this really began under Obama when Obama upended policy in the region. The results brought various American allies in the region closer together, most notably the Sunni Arabs and the Israelis. People are treating this like this is a new era, a new age. You have to remember within the Muslim world, they're hudnas. There are very temporary alliances, and the great enthusiasm that people are having, they're treating this like this is now final. Because Americans think that when you've reached a certain point of progress, this is the new normal, and you don't go down from there, you just keep going up. In practice, of course, in the Middle East, you have this love bombing, you have these temporary friendships that are very, very temporary. And just because somebody is acting like they're now your new best friend, this is something that culturally is just a way of doing things in the region. It does not mean anything significant, except, again, that everybody is very worried about Iran, which the Saudis absolutely are.
So, to conclude on the triangle of Palestinian Authority, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, would it be safe to say Biden's trip to these three people, or meeting these three government, I hate to call Palestinian Authority even a government. They don't exist anyhow.
Government. They're a terrorist group.
Exactly. Would it be safe to say he went there and made that area safer for terrorists and came back?
Yeah, certainly he didn't accomplish anything either for America, for the region. The Saudis did not meaningfully commit to producing any more, oil, and why would they? Biden has nothing to offer them. He has nothing to offer anybody. As far as the Israelis went, there's no actual functional government for him to meet with. All he did was basically meet with Abbas and signal the resumption of American pressure on Israel, of America choosing the Islamic terrorists over Israel, which everybody knew he was going to do anyway.
Okay. He concluded his trip by saying something like this: "We will not leave a hole to be vacuumed by Russia, Iran, and China." 16 hours later, Russia, Iran, and Turkey had a summit in Tehran. What do you think about that?
Well, as a practical matter, Russia's been backing Iran, and their backing is worth a whole lot more than America's backing, unfortunately. This is a message that Putin intended to send to the region. It's a very effective message because, at least under Biden, you can be an ally of the United States and it gets you absolutely nothing. Whereas if you're an ally of Russia, well, it does get you something, at least until the Russians decide that they want to cut you out. But at least you get some kind of rational self-interest there. If the Russians or the Chinese do something to you, it's because they want something. Whereas Biden is following these various leftist agendas, which have absolutely no rational self-interest for the United States at all. Biden will sell you out not because you're not a good enough ally, not because he has something to gain from it, but because the left hates certain kinds of countries. It hates some of America's allies, and in many cases it backs Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood, like Iran, and so it will undermine traditional American allies regardless of anything they do or don't do. And this is why it's so dangerous to be an ally of the United States, unfortunately.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way. Being an ally of United States of America now is a bad idea. Okay, you talked about it a few times or hinted at it, but I've been covering no matter where you go with Middle East right now, Qatar seem to pop up. So they are our mediator apparently now for the Iran deal. They are also our middleman to pay Taliban or Afghan airline, which is owned by Taliban now, to fly Afghans out of Afghanistan to Doha. World Cup happening in November in Qatar. What's Qatar's role here? Why is Qatar being picked to do all of this?
Well, the Qataris picked themselves. You go back 20 years, particularly around September 11th, and the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates were the big players on the Sunni side in backing terrorism. On the Shiite side, obviously Iran. Fast forward now, the Saudis and the UAE are much less interested in backing Sunni terrorists, but the Qataris have absolutely taken over the business. They're the primary backers for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is functionally operating out of Qatar. They've managed to pull off the coups of the Arab Spring out of Qatar. Obviously, Al-Qaeda has deep connections to Qatar. The Qataris enabled the whole Taliban takeover. Literally, we went to them asking the Qataris to host these negotiations with the Taliban, which was, again, like asking the Soviets to host negotiations with the Viet Cong, because, again, they're state sponsors. So, of course, the Qataris were quite happy to enable everything, including the Taliban takeover. And the Qataris thought the Taliban exactly had to talk to the Americans to assure them, yes, there'll be opportunities for women. Everything will be absolutely fine. Qataris are obviously the major backers of Hamas, but Hamas is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, so that part is not at all surprising. And Qataris really control foreign policy in the United States to an incredible degree. For example, Brookings, which really is the big think tank on the left for foreign policy, is pretty much wholly owned by Qatar. Even the New York Times had reported it back in the day. Al Jazeera, which basically sets the agenda for Middle Eastern coverage for the media, is a project of Qatar. If you recall the whole Jamal Khashoggi thing, where they turned this guy who worked for Qatar into a martyr, just shows how much power, how much authority the Qataris have over entire media. And you mentioned the World Cup happening in Qatar. Now, if you read British newspapers, you will see coverage of the death toll, because the Qataris, like every other petro slave state, they bring in huge numbers of foreign workers, mostly non-Muslim. They work them to death. These people are working in 120-degree temperatures. They die in large numbers. The others get cheated. Women get abused. Now, all this is normative in these cultures. Anyway, the British papers will report on all the abuses in the World Cup. American papers will not touch that. the whole Khashoggi thing showed how the Washington Post and major American papers entirely answer to Qatar, they answer to Al Jazeera, and so on and so forth. So the Qataris basically control foreign policy, media coverage in the United States of the region. Whatever appears in our media is because the Qataris put it there effectively. When you go to Europe, you can actually see negative, very negative coverage of Qatar. In the United States, you will not see any of it at all.
Well, thank you for that. I agree with everything you said. I just figured at least my audience need to know, even though it's Qatar, but they still play a huge role, even though they've been playing nice or supposedly a lot of American things. Oh, it's Qatar, they're harmless. They're not. But we are up for our next sponsor commercial. Let's take a quick break here from Mike Lindell and his brand new product, My Coffee. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm excited to announce my new product, My Coffee. I get products all the time from entrepreneurs for my new platform, mystore.com. And when I tried My Coffee for the first time, I was blown away. It is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I spent the last 4 months doing my due diligence, and this family-owned business micromanages every step from the fields to the cup to ensure the best quality coffee you're ever going to have. It starts with the beans that are grown in Honduras. Honduras's volcanic soil and humid climate make the perfect growing conditions for coffee plants, which produce the best beans ever. Then each batch is tested for its aroma, taste, and other aspects to meet the highest standards in the coffee industry. And after that, it goes into production, which is all done right here in the USA. It's like you're getting that small batch specialty coffee, but delivered right to your front door. So go to mystore.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code and you'll get your very own My Coffee for 25% off. You guys all know that I've traveled the country for the past year and a half. I've stayed in hundreds of hotels. I've tried every coffee out there. Well, some of the coffees have that terrible aftertaste, some that leave me jittery, or I get an upset stomach. Well, My Coffee is different. It's the richest, smoothest, best coffee I've ever had. My Coffee comes in a variety of flavors. You get them ground or whole bean. Plus, it's certified organic and non-GMO. I guarantee it'll be the best coffee you've ever had. So go to mystore.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code and you'll get My Coffee for 25% off. And I'm going to give you deep discounts on all my store products. That's mystore.com. It's my new platform for USA entrepreneurs. Please order now.
Welcome back to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for staying with us until now. Please do go to mystore.com. Grab yourself some delicious coffee, some extractivity. That's going to help you through your day, and it has lots of benefits. Use the promo code AC21. And that will help this broadcast. Since we're at the end part of this program, I don't want to take too much time marketing. Just do support us. We are here with Daniel Greenfield, Chairman Fellow at David Horowitz Freedom Center. Daniel, I saw a piece that you published recently. Do pardon me as I can't remember where you published it, but the headline of it said, "The only one winning in Russia-Ukraine war is Islam." Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the Russians and the Ukrainians already have pretty low birth rates. They're obviously dying. They're destroying territory. Those are two Christian countries that are two European Christian countries that are wrecking each other and themselves. Russia is using Islamic soldiers. Much of the Russian military already consists of Muslim soldiers. You have some Muslim mercenaries operating in Ukraine. And on the long term, it's just a matter of birth rates. The Russians and Ukrainians have low birth rates. Putin's big idea was some sort of reapproachment between his idea of what Christianity should be and Islam, and he said that Greater Russia will be built on this kind of reapproachment between Christianity and Islam. Of course, we know how that works out historically. Increasingly, Russian cities are filling up with Muslim migrants who are being welcomed in, at least by the Russian authorities, if not by the Russian people. And, if Russia succeeds in taking over part of Ukraine, that territory is going to end up being settled eventually by the Muslims who are going to be part of Greater Russia. On the flip side, Ukraine becomes part of the European Union. Again, mass Muslim migration into Europe. So there's no particular winner here. This is, another case, short-sighted case of countries grappling over historic nationalist rivalries instead of thinking in terms of the big picture. Who are our enemies? Under what kind of system are my grandchildren under? What kind of system are we going to be living under 100 years from now? And they're not doing that.
Interesting. Why is Biden regime helping Ukraine enough to survive, but not enough to survive win?
No, Biden could have headed off this war before it even started if he had chosen to do that. He chose not to do it. He basically wants to posture as if he's actually making a difference. In practice, of course, he's painfully dragging out the conflict. No, you either do or don't do, to paraphrase Star Wars. You don't do this halfway leading from behind thing, which is very much what Biden does, because it's what Obama was doing. Obama dragged out the Syrian war forever instead of just making a decision one way or another. Biden is doing the same thing. We're going to provide them with some weapons. We're not going to provide them with these weapons. Okay, 2 months later, we're going to provide them with these weapons. But now with those weapons, we're not going to provide them any meaningful quantity. This really began with Obama. First time Putin invaded Ukraine was under Obama. Obama began slow walking shipments. He was providing boots and helmets, which is helpful, but not actually a significant deterrent. And this dragged on miserably. And now this is a resumption of that whole thing. The moment Trump was out of office, Biden came into office, the whole Afghanistan withdrawal happened, and Putin said, hey, this is a good opportunity. And no, he took it. This is what happens. Whatever you think of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian government is far from the kind of noble paragon of saints that the media makes them out to be. But the bottom line is Russia thinks in terms of building an empire, expanding an empire, but they don't even have their own people to properly fill that empire. So this empire is ultimately going to go to the various Islamic constituencies that are going to be part of this. And bottom line is, when America is weak, Russia, China, Iran, whoever, they're going to take advantage. And Biden keeps signaling that America is weak, that America is impotent. And, yet he insists on talking tough as if he's actually going to do anything about it. And that just makes things worse. It's the worst of both worlds, which is what we have here.
Very true. Talk about Syrian war. So Turkey, I guess, Russia and Iran are trying to talk Turkey out of Syria. But then also yesterday, Israel attacked Syria. Well, not Syria, you know what I mean. The terrorist bases there. In no shape or form do I ever believe Turkey is a good country, nor do I believe Erdogan is on our side. But do you think there is enough reason or enough benefit for Turkey to walk out? And will Israel continue taking out these terrorist bases?
Oh, Turkey is obsessed with the Kurds because they have a huge growing Kurdish population that they need to repress and keep down, because their whole Turkey is also fantasizing about rebuilding the Ottoman Empire. But again, they don't actually have the proper people to do that. So they're dependent on Kurds and even their own country, whom they continually repress. And they're obsessed with Syria because the Kurds are there. Likewise, Syria is a battleground for Israel because you have Hezbollah over there, you have various Shiite terrorist groups operating over there, and of course you have various Sunni terrorist groups also operating over there. So it's a perpetual conflict. It's always going to be a perpetual conflict. I mean, Syria is divided between the Shiites, or at least the Alawites, who are Shiite allied, and the Sunnis, which, much like Iraq, means it's going to be a perpetual war. You also have different ethnic groups, much like in Iraq. So again, it's a recipe for a perpetual, nonstop conflict. Israel has issues there because Iran is using it as a base in its various terrorist proxies. Turkey has issues because the PKK and the Kurds are over there, and a bunch of other countries also have issues there. So it's just an ongoing bleeding wound that's really, I think, a perpetual problem, much like Iraq. People think, you're going to have a big dictator there like Saddam or Assad. It's going to stabilize it. I mean, it works for a bit maybe, but eventually it's going to collapse and the whole perpetual civil war is going to resume, which is also the normal state of affairs in Islam. The Sunni-Shiite split goes back very early to the Islamic era, because once you go past Muhammad, you start entering an era in which there are going to be perpetual conflicts. So, people think in terms of Islam conquering the world. Various Islamic groups definitely have that kind of agenda. They would like to conquer the world, but half the time they're going to be fighting each other, because once you say that the only religion we believe in is the religion of the sword, if we are stronger, then that means that Allah is on our side. So, if you believe that and you've got one leader there and another leader decides to take him out, well, and he wins, great, Allah is on the side. So you have endless war. That's what Islam is. Muslim outreach people who are doing dawah, they claim that Islam is going to create stability and order in the world, that they're the rightly guided religion, and that if you just submit to Sharia, everything is going to be fine. You look at the Muslim world, it's a messy, bloody hellhole of endless fighting.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we are absolutely out of time. Please tell my audience where they can go to find your work and support you.
Well, I'm honored to be a Shulman Journalism Fellow for the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Our site, frontpagemag.com, has some fantastic journalists and some video broadcast interviews, including a lot of your work as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Can we please have you back so we can discuss this further?
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you so much. And stay safe and stay vigilant. God bless you and God bless America. Goodbye.
You're watching Lindell TV.